Welcome to Sinister Heroes. I'm your host, Danny Iniquitous. Thank you for tuning in. Today's episode, we are talking about the Fey Wanderer Ranger. If you like what we do here, please like, share, subscribe. Please keep commenting. We are always very happy to hear from you guys. It really is awesome. Some of the characters you come up with, some of the games you played where you've had these opportunity to play these things out, and we just love to hear it. So thank you so much for doing that. And without further ado, let's jump right into the video. The Fey Wanderer Ranger comes to us from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. This is a very cool subclass for the Ranger because it really adds a bunch of things to the Ranger's kit that a lot of people feel they were missing, and it's a great foundation that really boosts up the Ranger from where it was before to where it is now. It's a great addition. A lot of people tend to have issues with the Ranger. I tend to really like the Ranger, actually. It's surprisingly one of my favorite classes to play. I think there's a lot of cool things you can do with it, and I love things that don't get the appeal that they deserve, especially in a situation with the Ranger, because a lot of people disliked it. They hated it from the beginning. They thought it was underpowered. They thought it wasn't as strong as everything else. But now it has changed and evolved into something different, and the Fey Wanderer is a great representation of that. This kit that you get with the Fey Wanderer really gives you this wonderful ability to be more than just your traditional Ranger. It gives you the availability to be a face, to be able to talk to other people and lead the characters if you surprisingly find yourself in a situation where there isn't a bunch of charisma characters running around. It's a great thing that really balances the Ranger and almost makes the Ranger feel like a real traditional hero base class, kind of like the way the Paladin is, where you kind of just naturally gravitate to more of those heroic kind of characters and just that natural doing good because it's what's right kind of a feel. This really reinforces that availability. Now, it is Fey influence, so you do get a lot of things that incorporate the Fey, and my favorite thing about the Fey is the evil part of its manipulation and its darkened prowess, that thing that most people don't really like to dive into or really kind of stay away from or just forget it exists. In the flavor text, there's one line that really reinforces that. And it's the last line that gives you a little kind of subtext about it. So we're just going to read that portion. As you wander the multiverse, your joyful laughter brightens the hearts of the downtrodden, and your martial prowess strikes terror in your foes. For great is the mirth of the Fey, and dreadful is their fury. That line is just, it's so perfect because that really encompasses what the Fey is. They're wonderful and joyous and this incredibly open and beautiful, wonderful thing when they are happy. But when they are not, you are going to suffer. They are horrible when they are not getting what they want, or they just feel the need to be horrible, and it's a great thing to reinforce, which is why we're kind of doing this. But without further ado, let's get into some of their abilities. At 3rd level, you get the ability Dreadful Strikes, which already calls to me. You can augment your weapon strikes with mind-scarring magic drawn from the gloomy hollows of the Feywild. When you hit a creature with a weapon, you deal an extra 1d4 psychic damage to the target, which can take this extra damage only once per turn. The extra damage increases to 1d6 when you reach 11th level in this class. Couple of things to note. When it says once per turn, that means your turn will cause it to happen. If it moves out of your range on his turn or its turn, whatever it is you're fighting, and you use a reaction to hit it, you can still apply Dreadful Strikes to that damage because it is not the same turn. A little tricky, sometimes it doesn't happen, but it's something that people tend to forget about, so it's good that you have it. Psychic damage. Very rarely resisted. It's great to have. The theory behind it, like the mentality that not only does it hit you with a regular attack or whatever weapon you're using, but like it frightens you or it causes you distress mentally or starts to fracture who you are. That is really what it's doing, and that's the effect you kind of want. And if you're like a Fey kind of entity, like you want to instantly invade somebody's mind and or just change them to whatever you want. So this psychic damage really feels very cool. And there's not a lot of instances where you can get the ability to hit with psychic damage, especially as regularly as you do with Dreadful Strikes. It is a weapon that you need to use, so you can use bows in order to trigger this. So keep that in mind. You don't need to be melee to do it. Very cool. Extra damage. A D4 doesn't sound like much when you hit later on, which is why it bumps up to a D6. If you're really doing dual wielding, which is something I tend to like, even though it's not optimizable, I just think it feels good. This will really bring your attacks, if you hit with everything, to do 4d6 plus whatever your modifier is times 3. So like say you had 5, it would end up being 4d6 plus 15, which is pretty decent. I think that's pretty good. So I wouldn't be too concerned about damage because you have this and you're a hunter, so you are a ranger, so you could have hunter's mark. There's plenty of ways to increase your damage beyond that, and don't worry about it. This is specifically here so you can keep pace with the other damage dealing that you're doing. The Swarmkeeper gets something similar to this, so it's something that's really been increasing with the ranger to keep their damage going. It's awesome. It's a passive. You'll be using this constantly. But really try to envision what that means for your character when you can stab something and like really like glare at it, or maybe make that part of the description. Like say this is what kills the target, and your DM lets you describe how it happens. Really lean into that. It's going to give you a great visual of what your character is and what they're like. So enjoy it. It's a fun thing to be scary. At 3rd level, you also gain access to Fey Gifts and Fey Wanderer magic. Fey Gifts is really just a very, seasonable thing, kind of just flavoring your character really well. You gain horns, you smell like cinnamon, or your skin changes to match the seasons, whatever. Look through it. I happen to like the one that the shadow dances when no one's looking. I would really like to incorporate that with the DM, and it's because naturally I want to be scary and frightening. So if I was ever imposing to someone and I was talking to them and my shadow is just off doing whatever evil cryptic things, like moving like a shambling kind of like broken kind of skeletal creature while I'm talking, like I would really lean into that and a lot, just to make myself seem scary to other opponents and or NPCs or whoever I'm talking to really gain that benefit of just being frightening and weird. Or I'd also even choose the one that makes you smell kind of like cinnamon, or like a spice, like a really nice spice, because it's something to lure people close to you. And then I would really abuse that. Like I would really try and like make sure that was something lavish that I can get certain people to come towards me, maybe just to ask questions or really become intrigued about, and then really lay it on thick, whatever it is I'm doing. And really try to engage with them in a malicious manner to try and get something I want, with the understanding that force will be applied, whatever means necessary. Like I like those theories because it's a great way for me to build this character that kind of lures you in and traps you, or just like creates an illusion around you. It can be something that I would like, that just like some of the things you can do later on, and I'm going to mention this, you make like a double of yourself if you use certain skills or spells, so doing that might really reflect really well if you don't smell like yourself. Like if you smell like cinnamon but your double doesn't, like that would be cool. I think there's something that can be done there, but I think it's fun. I think it's a great way to flavor your character to what you want and how to build your character. Don't really just kind of sleep on these things, because it's a great way, especially if you're starting out and you're starting out at like level 1. Learning to lean into these things and help that build the trajectory of your character is a great way to build the foundations for. So you can kind of lean into that. Sorry to go off on that. But you also gain Fey Wanderer magic. This is a couple of spells that you automatically know. They don't count against your ranger spell list. So please dive into these. One thing I will say about the ranger spell list is there's a lot of things in that spell list that don't require your wisdom, that are based off your attacks. So like you can build a ranger that's just straight up dex and constitution and not really worry too much. And there's plenty of spells unique to the ranger that really support that, almost like techniques. And I've mentioned this before, but don't sleep on that. Like don't sleep on the spell list. Really, it's worth it. That being said, a couple of spells here I think are really great. First and foremost, Charm Person. I get it, nobody really wants to use it, everyone's worried about the downfall. It can be very beneficial. Maybe you want to try it. Try it. If you're playing a Fey-like character, good, bad, or indifferent, Charm Person. Like it's something that's integral to the Feywild. I know it's kind of a trap spell. I know I get a lot of flack for it. But really, try it. If your intent is to be scary and evil and crazy and just like this lavish kind of nightmare creature, charming people is part of that. You know, like it works so well. You should really, really consider it. Just saying, you're going to have it anyway. You might as well make use of it. You're going to get Misty Step at 5th level. Great. Teleport. It's an awesome spell. You're going to use it more often than you think. Dimension Door. Great. At 17th level, and I know it's really high, so most of the time you won't ever see this level, but you get Mislead. And Mislead is one of those spells that a lot of people just don't really use very well or use often enough because they just don't want to. You know, like it's tricky, I get it. It's a 5th level spell. It's cool though. What it does is it makes you invisible for an hour, and it creates an illusionary double of yourself where you were standing, and the double lasts for the duration, but the invisibility ends if you attack and cast a spell, which is pretty on point. 5th level for invisibility, kind of a no-go for a lot of people, especially considering you can get it way earlier with other things. But you can use your action to move the illusionary double up to twice your movement speed. It can make gestures, it can speak and behave in whatever manner you choose. And you can see and hear through its eyes, and you can switch back and forth between listening to it and listening to you. Understand, like, that is awesome. That is that Loki skill where he talks to you and then just knifes you in the back. Like, that's that skill. That's that spell that is available to bards, warlocks, and wizards. It is a very cool ability. But understand the implications of being invisible and still having yourself walking around. In social interactions, it can be incredible. Also, as long as you don't attack or cast a spell, which means you can manipulate objects in the interim. Like, you can do other things. You can be standing on one side while going through other stuff and keeping somebody else busy. Like, you can talk to them and listen to them and go through all of their personal belongings at the same time. In a stealth scenario, this is gold. This is an incredible spell. But you need to be creative, and you need to be in a social scenario to use it. This is one of those aspects where you're tricky, you're scary, you're weird, because you don't know who if you're actually talking to you. And this is where I really like that idea of that scent of cinnamon. Because if you're invisible, that scent is still around. And if you're in like a social scenario, scaring someone or being intimidating towards someone or really being evil towards someone, and they're talking to your character and they don't see anything, and then all of a sudden they get that faint scent of cinnamon, like that is a moment that's cool. If DMs take it and make your bad guys use this spell, like, that is fun, that is exciting. That's one of those things that goes, oh dip, something bad's gonna happen. And it's great when you get to be the player and you could be that bad thing that's gonna happen. Like, it's cool, it's a great thing. I encourage people to use spells like this all the time. It's exciting, and a lot of the times you might want to use this for something else. There's plenty of other skills and abilities, especially when you're level 17, but enjoy some of these spells, because there's not going to be a lot of reasons for you to use them when you're not certain characters that you've built. So try and lean into that. Yeah, grab the stuff you need. There's plenty of stuff on the Ranger spell list that I think is incredible and everyone should get. But enjoy some of the things that you have that you didn't get to choose, because it helps to build the character the way kind of the subclass was intended. And a lot of that really fits into the theme of what you're doing. The final ability you get at level 3, yeah, you get a lot, which is cool, is Otherworldly Glamour. Your Fey qualities give you a supernatural charm. As a result, whenever you make a charisma check, you gain a bonus to the check equal to your wisdom modifier. In addition, you gain proficiency in one of the following skills of your choice: deception, performance, or persuasion. This is cool. This really makes you able to be a face and really compensate in case you don't have anybody that does all these abilities like deception or performance or talking to NPCs or other important characters in the game. This is why it's important to look at your stats when you're building your character from the ground up. You know, if you put a negative into your charisma because it's a dump stat and you're a ranger, this will end up pushing that, kind of depending on where you are with wisdom and how much you want to invest into it. But it's an interesting thing to keep in contact with. Ideally, keeping your charisma at a 0 would benefit you. Again, looking at these abilities when you're making your character from level 1 on is really why it's important. If you wanted to be scary, maybe you would pick up something with a background in intimidation, or maybe you pick a race that can give you the availability to have intimidation as one of your skills. That would be great in this kind of a scenario because you get your proficiency and it boosts up with your wisdom, which also boosts up your perception and insight and things like that. Insight is great for political scenarios where you're talking to other players and NPCs and characters in the game that are important, because it's hard to balance charisma for persuasion and deception and being able to know what the enemy is talking or thinking or really actually trying to say if they're lying, because it's wisdom based. This makes you very valuable because it combines that into one skill and ability, and it's good for you. Check these things out. This is a building kind of a moment where you got to see who your character is. Yeah, you're a ranger, but that doesn't mean you have to live in the forest constantly and do all these wild things and live in a rock for their whole life. Like, you could have other things, or maybe you were something before, or maybe you were trained as a ranger and you became something else. Like, there's plenty of reasons to work it out. This is a great moment to really focus on who you want your character to be. At 7th level, you gain access to Beguiling Twist. The magic of the Feywild guards your mind. You have advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened. In addition, whenever you or a creature you can see within 120 feet of you succeeds on a saving throw against being charmed or frightened, you can use your reaction to force a different creature you can see within 120 feet of you to make a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC. If the save fails, the target is charmed or frightened by you, your choice, for a minute. The target can repeat the saving throw at the end of its turn, ending the effect on itself on a successful save. This is really a Fey kind of ability. And the reason why I say it is because you're not involved in this. Someone casts Fear, it goes and it hits another creature. Someone casts Cause Fear, it hits another creature. There's a charm going around. Someone casts any ability that charms. There's other spells that do charming effects that aren't specifically charmed person. So be aware of those abilities. This is why it's Fey. You're watching it happen and you're just, maybe this would be great if it frightened out one. And now you get to turn it on that one. You just get to force a different creature to make that save. Like, it's awesome to just flip magic in another direction. And you can flip it on the person that cast it. It doesn't say that you can't. It doesn't say that it does. It doesn't stop the spell from happening, which is really interesting. But they have, your friend or whoever it is has to succeed on a saving throw, or yourself. Also, it doesn't specify that the creature making the saving throw is your friend or ally. If you are in a party with a conquest paladin or maybe a warlock or a wizard that uses fear, and I love fear, and the enemy succeeds on the saving throw, if that enemy is a creature and still within 120 feet of you, you still get to use this ability. So you are picking up the slack for someone succeeding and forcing someone else to make another save in case. In the situation where it's AoE fears, you can pick one as long as it's not the same one and use the reaction to cause a different one to hit that save again. There is no limit to how many times you can do this. There is no reason why you wouldn't do this constantly. It's so much stronger if you're in a situation where your own party uses spells like that. Like I get chills thinking about being with a conquest paladin or a warlock or someone that uses summon abyssal spirit, or I'm probably getting the name wrong. But the new summoning spell that lets you summon Shadow Spawn. Summon Shadow Spawn. And one of them has an ability where it frightens. Or maybe you have a warlock that has a closet with it and uses that ability. Like, there's lots of fears and charms in there. Especially ones that your characters can use. It doesn't say that you can't use this on anything that you do that causes this. Charm one person. If it fails, fear the next. It's so great to just watch magic just ebb and flow at your whims because you just feel like it. And when you really broaden the scope to using it to the full potential, it is wild that you get this. And it's fun and it's devious. And if you're in a social scenario and you're using things like that, it is awesome. Bards use a lot of charms and fears, or I really should. So great. It's wonderful. I can't tell you how great it is to really have something that really feels like desperately that dark part of whimsical fae, and this is that ability. At 11th level, you gain access to Fey Reinforcements. This is a summoning ability that gives you the ability to use one of the summoning spells from Tasha's. It reads as follows: the royal courts of the Feywild have blessed you with their assistance of Fey beings. You know the spell Summon Fey. It doesn't count against the number of ranger spells you know, and you can cast it without material components. You can also cast it once without using a spell slot, and you regain the ability to do so after a long rest. Whenever you start casting the spell, you can modify it so it doesn't require concentration. If you do so, the spell's duration becomes 1 minute for that casting. Now, there's a couple things to really understand about the summoning spells for Tasha's. A lot of the times, it depends on your spellcasting modifier, because that's what's going to affect the on-hit abilities or the ability to hit. So whatever the spell is, whatever their attacks are, if it makes an attack, it's based on your spell spell attack. If it uses a save, it's your spell save DC. So you're a ranger, so really weigh the weight of how this is going to work. Understand, having another creature on the board is a benefit already, because someone is going to have to pay attention to it. Someone's going to have to do something with it. It's going to be important to get these circumstances set up. And there's ways that if you're not really high on wisdom, for you to make these things work. And that depends on which one you choose, because they all have 3 options. In Summoning Fae, you get to choose Fuming, Mirthful, or Tricksy. If you choose the Fuming Fae, the Fae has a bonus action that it can take on its turn, which is it gives itself advantage on the next attack roll it makes before the end of this turn, which is great, which will compensate for you not having a high wisdom most of the time. Mirthful, the Fae can force one creature it sees within 10 feet of it to make a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC. Unless the save succeeds, the target is charmed by you and the Fae for 1 minute until the target takes any damage. It does not state that the target has advantage if it is being adequately fought by you. So that's a benefit to understand and maintain. Because if you try to charm someone in battle, they have advantage on making a saving throw. Not here. There is no limit to how many times you can do this, and you can use Beguiling Twist to turn that into something else just in case they succeed on that save anyway. So there's a lot of play within itself within this class that works. And Trixie, they can fill a 5-foot cube with magical darkness, which lasts until the end of its next turn. So those are all bonus actions it can take, which you would depict what they do, obviously. I understand what you do with this is going to be a little complicated because you now have to judge 2 different creatures in combat. But it does not require concentration. So you can throw up other concentration spells at that moment and get an incredible amount of things going. It's very cool. So understand that you get this free once a day. You should be using it once a day. There's plenty of reasons to do it. If you play with flanking, that's a good enough reason to do it. It gives you another target. Just make sure if you're not really using this as an offensive tool and more of a defensive tool, put it out into the world and keep it separate from the party. Keep it so if something's got to go after it, it has to go after it. To deviate, and that way on residual turns, it's wasted movement to come to your party. Do things like that, and you'll definitely have the benefit of it, even if you don't really want to invest into wisdom at whatever reason or whatever point this is. Again, it's early on, so early on, not really, but you're kind of at mid-level, or maybe your campaign's ending. This is a big spell. It is. It's exciting. It's fun. You can definitely cause some things to happen, and it's an extra character on the board, which means your action economy for your team is in the plus side now. At 15th level, you gain access to Misty Wanderer. This is a very elusive ability. You will have a lot of fun, and there's going to be lots of reasons to do this. So the flavor text reads, you can slip in and out of the Feywild to move in a blink of an eye. You can cast Misty Step without expanding a spell slot, and you can do so a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier, and you regain all expended spell uses when you finish a long rest. In addition, whenever you cast Misty Step, you can bring along one willing creature you can see within 5 feet of you. The creature teleports to an unoccupied space of your choice within 5 feet of the destination space. This is a dimension door. This is it's not as far as dimension door, but you can grab someone and get them out of a bad scenario. And you can do it a couple of times. At 15th level, you've had some ability score increases, so maybe you dump some of them into wisdom, which I would have encouraged, because I like the ability to have more uses of spells and abilities like that, so I can see the benefit of doing that. But even if you get 2, if you have a +2 to wisdom, that's 2 free teleports a day for nothing. And you can use your spell slots for whatever else you want. This is a get out of jail free card. This is a teleport away and dash, and then, make it 90 feet away from wherever you were, and then do it again the next round. You get the availability to escape a lot of bad scenarios from this. You can save somebody from this, and it doesn't really cost you anything for a couple of times a day, depending on what your wisdom modifier is. It's a great skill. You get Misty Step no matter what, because it's just one of the Feywild abilities. It fits with that Feywild real encouraging kind of lore behind it, because it's very elusive. Think about being in the forest and having something ping back and forth and whisper to you from different corners of the forest, trying to scare you or trying to lure you somewhere, or trying to bring you to someplace great, or lure you in like Hansel and Gretel into the house so the witch can eat you. That's what it's here for. Let's lure the children into houses. But it's a cool thing that you get the availability to do. Sometimes I like to think of my characters as being, sometimes I like to think of my characters being bad guys, but I like to play where a lot of the DMs that I play with are very, very cool with this concept where they're reactionary to what the players are doing to their characters. Unless their characters are like gods or demons or high-level deities, you can influence them and you can begin to scare them by doing things like that. If you were talking to someone and you were not in plain sight and you were just pinging back and forth from different angles of a room, that's scary. That's a reason to influence them. That's a reason for them to be nervous and be frightened and not know what to do and kind of be willing to do whatever it is just to make this thing stop. And that's cool. Like, that's a great thing to do. That's enticing. If you're fighting an enemy and you have the availability to do this a bunch of times, let the enemy come to you. Jump halfway across the screen. You know what I mean? Like, have it come back. You can, everything you have to do, you can do from range. You know, there's no reason. You can just laugh maniacally and be, you know, carrying a bow and just jump halfway around, and it's so much harder for you to be caught. You know, like, there's a lot of great things you can do. And it comes from this really simple spell that you get. And you have it no matter what. You might as well use it. And when you get the chance to abuse it, oh, it's going to feel good to abuse it. Our final thoughts on the Fey Wanderer Ranger. It gives you this awesome ability to be a really scary kind of a character. I mean, I'm talking about like the Joker in the woods. Like, I'm talking the evil jester that laughs maniacally and hangs in the trees and scares away people traveling, but protects the villages in the area from bandits. Whatever it is, this perfect, just like evil kind of a character. You know, it's just, it gives you that way to just really toy with the world around you, and gives you the abilities that really reinforce that. Now, like, if you get close and I stab you, like, you're gonna feel not only pain from the stabbing, but like this psychic, like, oh no, like, this is so much worse than it has to be. Or like this moment where you hit and like the world gets dark around, but you can see the glowing eyes of your enemy staring at you and this drool just falling out of its mouth. Like, it really gets you the ability to create that character. It gives you the ability to make the world around you very scary. This like wicked forest that now becomes darker, and like the skies become red because this entity that doesn't even seem that human anymore, because of like the antlers that are growing out of its head or whatever it is, the different changing colors of its skin. Like, it just feeds into this joyous, whimsical crazy that you get with the Feywild. And the fact that you can turn anything into a fear, and you can just cause enemies to just freak out and flip things good or bad onto other people. Like, it feels cool. It feels like you have so many options now because you have all the ranger abilities, and your reaction is actually more useful because you have more options to use it. And if you do use your reaction, if you use it just for an opportunity attack, you get psychic blades. Like, you get a lot. You want things to move around. You don't want things anywhere near you. So that's a great thing to have. You want things to be scary and moving around constantly. And you can keep things away from you if you want, or stay far away. You can use cool abilities, and you can really mix it up in social environmental adventures, because now you have deception and persuasion and insight, and if you wanted to somehow snag intimidation, which I suggest you do, it's great for you there. It's all right there. It gives you this awesome ability to really be able to grow into whatever role you need to be, whatever you feel more comfortable in. Having high perception is like an addiction. Like, once you've done that, once you've played a druid or something and you can see everything, every perception check rocks, it is hard to turn away from that. And having that and being able to notice other things and having great insight and great wisdom and having great persuasion and deception and or intimidation, like, you can do so many great things. And it's so cool to have those and really push those abilities. I can't say enough about it. One thing I did mention earlier that I should probably correct is with otherworldly glamour, understanding that the charisma check does work with any charisma check. So you don't have to worry about it being something like just a straight charisma check, because it still adds on that wisdom modifier. And if you don't have intimidation, persuasion, or deception, and you still end up having to roll them with, proficiency or whatever, you always get that wisdom bonus to those abilities. So I suggest you get whatever proficiencies you can into those if possible. You're not going to be a skill monkey, but you can do most everything else. Outside of that, I think if you're looking for a ranger class that's crazy, that acts crazy, that's looking to get into a little weird stuff, and be very elusive and be kind of just hard to read and just random all over the place, this is a perfect candidate for that. And it really enforces a lot of great things that the ranger would be. It's easy to build this character. You know, your interactions with the Feywild don't happen in the city. Rangers in the city aren't really as often a thing when they're not doing their job. They're often in the woods or protecting the city or the areas from the outskirts from threats that never make it there because they're that good at their job. You know, when battle breaks out, they send in the rangers. When there's like a horde coming, they send in the rangers. That's what they do. So being out in the wilderness, in the woods, is the great way to interact with the Feywild, to get sucked into their world, and to gain these abilities as a result. Maybe you're a good guy and you just walked in and swam in a lake, and now you're just a crazy person who can't account for 2 years of his life where he was abused horribly and tortured in the Feywild, and came back with all these abilities and now has to kind of sketchily put everything back the way he believes it to be. Those abilities, that wide open array of what this story gives you, from just the abilities, the skills, and the little bit of lore that you can put into it and talk to your team about, it gives you this wonderful ability to write almost any character on any level that's dealt with trauma, because the Fae can do that to you. And it's great to have that reinforced, and it's awesome. So I really can't say enough of how great this subclass is. I love the ranger anyway, so it's really great to have this thing up and going. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much for sticking all the way through. I really appreciate it. Please like, share, subscribe, keep commenting. We love to hear from you guys, and thank you for giving the spooky kid a chance.